being a little bit off center, and I'm running slightly behind, riveting. I'm trying to recenter myself slightly. No, that way. Anyway, nobody's in here yet, so I suppose I could futz around for a minute, except for on the replays. People have been wondering what's going on. All right, there we go. It's recentering me. Okay. Oh boy, it's been one of those weeks. But happy to be here as always for the OSR Reddit Roundup. As folks come in, let me know if the audio and video levels are out of whack. They sound all right from my end, but as always, let me know if your experience is different than mine. I don't think I have any programming notes. The Logan's Run project is going well. We've had some nice, I think we're 3 episodes in, and it's been great so far. Feel free to hop in if that sounds like something interesting to you. Just to reiterate, if you not aware, the Logan's Run project is something that we're doing where in which we are taking the campaign tools that I went over from Worlds Without Number and actually putting it through a practical use case, which is converting the movie Logan's Run or using it as inspiration for a setting. So that's fun. We've been doing that. It's been a lot of groundwork, which I think is interesting. I think like a lot of folks, a lot of times we want to jump ahead, perhaps before we're ready, but the Worlds Without Number is really trying to help us set a good ground rules, which I think is good. I'm trying to move my camera here slightly. Hold on, sorry about this. Which I think is good, but we'll see how that goes. Let me pull up a window for OSR Reddit. I don't think I have anything else to mention. I'm just going to get Reddit open here. We will just do that. Get things organized. That is not getting things organized. That is the opposite of organization, senor. So folks hitting the chat now. Welcome. Glad to have you. It's a little bit blown out. I guess it's not going to matter in a minute because I'm about to share this window. All right. Actually, no. Window. Roots of our hobby. There we are. And there is the OSR subreddit. Okay. As usual. So I've been doing these now. I was trying to think back when I first did the first one. It's been a while. I think like it's been, I want to say at least a couple months now of doing these. I'll hit refresh again just in case. I've been usually using the hot tab. I know I've varied it a little bit now and again, but I think the hot tab just gives a good sense of things that have some discussion, hopefully some voting action. It seems to be a mix of things that the community has found interesting and also new, and so on and so forth. And I just try to go through, if you haven't seen these before, just try to go through and find interesting things. Feel free to send me a message in the chat if you see something that we should cover, and we just talk about it. Here we go. Sometimes it takes me a while to find something, but this sounds like a good one. Always upvote your fellow Redditors, presuming that they're not spamming or doing anything else to, against community guidelines. This was posted by Bobby Watson. How do you handle retainers? Do your players control them directly like they were PCs? Do your players tell you, the referee, what they should do and you control them? Do your PCs tell them, in-game, what to do and they react to it to the best of their abilities? Quick, stop this goblin from reaching the ladder. Do you, the ref, control them based on the global instructions given by the players before an encounter? We don't attack first. Spread out if you hear fire. Remember, no rushing. Also, when does a level 0 NPC become a level 1? After any amount of XP received? All right, so these are a bunch of good questions. I am going to take them down in order. Of course, this is just me. And if you folks in the chat, I'd love to hear your input as always with these. So first question, breaking this down. Do my players control them directly like they were PCs? No, I don't do that. They don't get to control them directly. Do your players tell you, or so do my players tell me what they should do and I control them? Yes. But I do so to follow up, yes, but the third question is more how I do it, right? PCs will tell the retainers, their hirelings, whatever, in game what they want to do, and then those retainers, NPCs, will react to it to the best of their abilities. So yes, they tell me what they want them to do, but it's through in-game communication. If there are global instructions given by the players, the retainers will absolutely do that. So if the party has usually called an SOP or standard operating procedure, hey, if this happens, spread out, or if we're entering a certain area, spread out or stay together, or you guys watch the rear, or whatever instruction may be, yeah, they in absence of other instructions, in absence of other, it's assuming circumstances don't put them, assuming the circumstances don't create an impossible situation, or one in which if I'm rolling morale, if it says like go after the goblins and there's just a mass of goblins and it looks like it's essentially a charge to their own death doing it, and I roll some morale and the morale's like, nah, they don't feel like dying today for their boss, then that will affect it. But yeah, to the best of their ability and given their current morale and current loyalty, sure, they will do that. And then when does a level 0 NPC become a level 1? Well, if they are the adventuring types, if they're going on adventures with the party, then they get a share of the treasure, which is a share of the XP. And so then I just look for, I think I essentially do it like level 1 to level 1. I don't know if that's correct, but I basically use whatever they would kind of get, I guess what I should say, from level 1 to level 2, something of that nature. Or maybe I use the 1,000 XP. I think I've gone back and forth on the number, but some amount of experience, they will go to level 1, and then they'll usually decide, I'll have them roll some more dice to see if they feel like sticking around. And if they do, they probably will be negotiating a pay raise, since now they're better. Something of that sort. See, Frederick Ork. Hey, Frederick. Says the deeper the party goes down the dungeon equals the more chance of NPC desertion or betrayal. I don't have it be an automatic chance like that. I think in terms of, in a sense, you can look at it that way, right? The deeper you go, the more dangerous it gets. The more dangerous it gets, the more likely NPCs are going to be faced with their own mortality. The more likely they are to maybe say to you, I don't want to die today. But I particularly, I myself don't have some kind of absolute rule. Okay, now you're down to level 2, so now your NPCs are X amount more likely to run. I don't do that, but probably when you factor everything together as a practical matter, yeah, the more dangerous things get, the more likely you're going to reach the limits of what your NPCs will want, or what they will be talked into or cajoled or forced, or whatever they'll feel like they can do before they're going to run out. All right, so we got some comments in here. Blue Wolf _SK. Excuse me. They're running OSE. The DM controls the retainers. They generally act in line with usual party procedures and their own temperament. They can be ordered around by the players in and out of character. Particularly risky orders require a loyalty check. Clearly, suicidal commands are outright refused. Level 0 retainers become level 1 and get a class as soon as they get any amount of XP. That's interesting. Any amount of XP. I don't know. I mean, is that in OSC? Did I miss a rule? That just seems like not, or that's too easy. And I left my drink in the other room, so now my throat is parched, and have a little bit of a roughness. So sorry about that in advance if I'm wheezing and coughing and whatnot. I don't know that any amount of XP seems too small. I mean, it's even in a system like BX in which you're getting most of your XP through treasure, you do get a pittance through combat. So that doesn't mean a level 0 mercenary levels up after their first combat. They do get some XP from that. There is X amount of XP, a non-zero number of XP for a single combat encounter, assuming they survive. So that seems like too low, but I don't know. I don't remember what different systems might be doing. Not level 1 and 2, level 5 or 6. No one has been that deep and never come back. Run away! Oh, I see. As far as the Frederick Orr talking about dungeon levels, yeah, I think it's also going to depend on who they're with and what level they are and kind of their city. But yes, right. Again, I probably wouldn't have an automatic thing like, hey, they hit level 5. No one's been that low. They might, we got to run away because they might have faith in our party. But if they're on level 5 and things starts to go bad, I would definitely factor that into morale checks. I might add some kind of dungeon, like make the dungeon level, add some kind of modifier to it's like, okay, this level 0 retainer's on level 5 of the dungeon, so it's going to be hard. They're going to be hard pressed to keep their nerve. But I don't know if that would make it automatic. But that's definitely interesting. But I would also have it be when things go bad, right? Not just they're on level 5, but they're on level 5 and they just saw one of the other retainers get hacked apart by something horrible. Whatever that morale roll or they would be making at that point, I probably would have maybe put an extra modifier on there for dungeon level. It's an interesting thing to think about. That definitely creates a cool wrinkle. Maybe a difference between their level and the dungeon level. So if you have a level 8 fighter and they have a level 4 fighter retainer, that level 4 fighter isn't going to be phased in the way level 0 mercenary might be phased. Let's see. Bor Shaon replied to Blue Wolf _SK and said, in my game, when a PC hits 0, their highest level retainer is promoted to full party member. Lets me keep things lethal without ruining my player's night, and it encourages my players to take care of their retainers instead of trying to sneakily use them as cannon fodder. I mean, that's interesting, and I have heard that before. I've used that in my game. I don't know about this. It takes care of their retainers instead of trying to sneakily use them as cannon fodder, because if your PC hits 0, they're going to have to use their highest level retainer. That's fine, but wouldn't that just mean that you still want to use them as cannon fodder? Or maybe you don't use your highest level retainer as cannon fodder, but if you have other retainers of lower level, that they are cannon fodder? I mean, it doesn't seem like it means you would certainly want at least some of your retainers to die before you die. If it comes between, I have 4 retainers or my PC, yeah, I want to maybe keep the highest level retainer around in case I die, but I got 3 other retainers, send them into the breach. So I don't know if that logic, but I might just not be seeing it. Let's just see what a couple more of these say. I feel this is one of those interesting questions that people ask, but I guess it's very much a DM thing. I know some DMs let the players just control them. I don't like that. I like the fact that they can't be so sure of what the retainers are going to do, and that way there's no. I feel like there's no bait and switch, no haha. If they had control of the retainer and suddenly they lose it, they might feel, hey, this is unfair. Whereas if I'm controlling them the whole time and they can give them orders, they have an understanding from the start that these are different individuals and they're not just, they're not just extras. They're not just elements of their character. They're separate. Let's see. Religion _NC says, I ask the PCs to control the retainers in combat. However, I make morale checks for the retainers, and if they fail, we'll direct what the NPC does. Out of combat, the PCs direct the NPCs, and they comply with all reasonable direction. If a marginal request is made of the NPC or interaction needed, the GM assumes control. That's fine, too. I just prefer just to keep control instead of jumping control back and forth. I think that's it. So I think good question, Bobby Watson. It seems like most folks are on the same wavelength with that. I gave it an upvote. Let's see what else do we have here. Okay, OSR Delve buff. Some house rules for those nonsensical dungeon crawls. All right, let's give it a shot. Okay, this is called OSR Delve buff. Some house rules for those nonsensical dungeon crawls, posted by Scavenger22. Some people are moving away from combat-focused OSRs. That's fine. But this HR, I'm guessing house rule, is for those who would like to enjoy a dungeon crawl. The issue when doing so is the clash between the old expectations about being careful and doing multiple expeditions to manage your resources and what newbies expect from a dungeon crawl when coming from other medias like video games or the recent flood of isekais, or whatever they call the genre of Asian-produced comics about people wandering in a D&D-like world to kill the demon lord or equivalent. I'm not familiar with the term, That's cool. Learn something new every day. Let's see. Okay, these house rules are not meant to be faithful nor exactly balanced. The only goal is to produce a funny dungeon crawl where that can still happen if you overextend. I'm not sure what they mean there, but it's less random than before. If you choose to give it a try, let me know. Okay, we can just go over there. The fluff. Monsters will increase the local quote-unquote mana. Adventurers can use this new resource to recover faster than usual only when they're not in a settled area. Monsters drop crystals instead of coins / mundane loot that can be used in different ways, i.e. when they're in a dungeon or some monster-infested location. All right, I can't say I'm super into this right now. I don't know, something about using... mana has been so overused in various video games and things that I almost see it and I just automatically go like, I don't like the sound of it. I don't know if this could be interesting given the right, game world. The idea that monsters are dropping crystals, it definitely has that kind of anime sort of vibe to it, I feel like. All right, so the rules are: all monsters will drop a mana crystal instead of normal treasures. Replace all coins and mundane loot with a single crystal that weighs 10 cn. Is that grams? I don't know. Okay, whatever. 10 carats? No, that's not a weight. I don't know. Okay, just whatever. It's like basically gem weight, and a value equal to the sum of the loot value. So you still have to roll up the loot. You're just going to convert it to a gem. Hey, Elfbait. Elfbait says, it's a Kaiser stories where regular people are transported into fantastic worlds like the original D&D cartoon. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Oh, Frederick Gork says 10 coins. Okay. All right. Not okay. So thank you. I was trying to figure out CN and I was like, am I missing a gram or some kind of weight? Okay. 10 coins like a gem and value equal to sum of the loot value. This also means that you could track using the treasure letter and roll them when the adventure's over and the pieces go back to the guild settlement to sell. Basically, you could use your existing treasure generators. You're just going to convert that into the value of the gem. Magical loot and quote-unquote lair treasures are unaffected, so you can still have a huge pile of gold for dragons. All right? Each adventurer can use up to 1+1 mana for every increment in their Thaco/saves table. Well, that seems needlessly complicated, maybe? I.e., a 4th level fighter has a limit of 2 mana. The mana rating of a dungeon or equivalent is 1. Settlements or locations without monster/magic will have a rating of 0. All right. I'm not sure what these ratings are going to do. Any healing will use the target hit dice instead of plain d6. I.e., if you heal a fighter with Cure Light Wounds, they will get 1d8 plus 1 instead of d6 plus 1, and you will add a con modifier to the result. All right, so we've got this thing about mana. We've got something about these gems. We're I feel like we're a little bit scattered here, so I'm not sure we're healing. I'm not sure what connects these yet. At 0 hit points, you will die only if you fail a save versus death. If you succeed, you are still left in a weakened state until healed to 1 hit point or more. Being weakened equals half speed and can't use special abilities or spells or focus enough to activate a magical item other than potions or always on wearables. All right. If mana is higher than 0, the following effects will activate for any adventure, i.e. someone with an actual class. When you rest for a turn after a battle, this should always happen. Remember the 1 turn every 6 rule. They roll mana rating hit dice plus level and get a pool of temporary hit points equal to the result. We call it aura, but this is not relevant. Yes, please, let's not add a whole bunch of terms in here. These temporary HP are always used first, can't be healed, and are not part of your hit point total. Think of it as a shield before real damage happens. Temporary points are not additive. After every rest, you keep the highest result. Spellcasters can transfer mana into a wand, staff, rod, totally simple, and use it as free spell levels that can be used to cast prepared spells without losing them. The maximum mana rating is unaffected. You roll less hit dice, but you have more spell slots. You still get plus level, even if you incur all mana to FSL. free spell slots, free spell levels, optional variants. Whew. All right, I'm not. This is not not my thing. I will throw this into the chat. I'm just thinking, not for me. Frederick Gork says not very clear. Yeah, it's. I mean, look, it's someone's house rule, right? They're throwing it out there to get some feedback. I can just already tell. I mean, I really could tell from the beginning, but having read part of it, I already tell it's just not something for me. But I've thrown it in the chat and I've put it in the chat window so you can grab it and check it out. Elfbait says way too many steps. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot going on. I'm not sure I agree with the problem they're trying to solve. I don't know. It seems like they're trying to solve this problem. Hey, people don't want to do these new expectations, but I don't know if that's the case. In any case, I appreciate the effort, Scavenger. Hopefully you get some feedback, but I'm just going to chalk it up to, yeah, not for me. Okay, let's see. When your project has balloon on you, may as well show it off. OSR game with character customization. Okay, let's see. How to prep for the dark of Hot Springs Island. For people who swear by Mega Dungeons, why? What keeps you coming back to this style of play? I'd be interested maybe in the answers to that, but I haven't really done a lot of Mega Dungeoning. So it's not really applicable to me as something I can talk about. Okay, here we go. Questions on thief skills in VX and its retro clothes. This was posted 1 day ago by Wineaholic. My question is specifically for old school essentials thieves, but could apply to BX. My question has 2 parts. First, specifically in old school essentials, at low level, a thief's hear noises chance is the same as a surprise roll. 1 to 2 on a D6. While their hide and shadow scores are worse than surprise. Again, 1 to 2 on a D6. Supposing that a thief should at least have the average chance to hide, sneak, and not be surprised, how do you use these skills? Are they given before a surprise roll as a chance to avoid the surprise? Second, again, these numbers are specific to old school essentials. A thief has scores for finding treasure traps, opening locks, and picking pockets. Does this preclude all other classes from attempting these abilities, or are all adventures permitted an ability check? If the former, what reason stops an adventurer from checking for traps, picking a lock, or attempting to steal? If the latter, should a first-level adventurer with 16 dex automatically be a better thief than the first-level thief of average dex? Neither seems satisfactory. All right. So I'm going to take the second thing first. This was the big controversy about thieves, really to the very beginning of the thief. If you have a thief with these specific skills, aren't you then communicating to other players, other classes, hey, you can't do this stuff, this is the thief? And certainly that was one of the reasons people objected to thieves. It was, aren't all the classes doing these things? Why do we need a specialized class? It sort of hamstrings the other classes. And the answer to me, and never was made particularly clear, it's sort of however you want to read between the lines, presuming you read between the lines, is that what would be a role for a normal adventure is kind of a gimme for the thief. And the things that would seem impossible for a normal adventure is something you'd roll for a thief. So sure, that first level character, I probably wouldn't make it a 6, just a roll on their decks. I might give them a 1 in 6 chance if I'm using the D6 style skills. Sure, they can still do it. Roll 1 in 6. Oh, the thief can do it. Well, they can just do it. If it's something difficult, and you can determine what difficulty is, I think I did a whole video on the old school thief. You can check that out. I don't really want to interrupt everything to go track it down on my channel, though I suppose I could. This is easy to find. All right, I am going to post in the chat. In case you miss it, I just happen to have the link handy. Lovely how that works. You can. My take is basically that the thieves are supernatural in terms of their abilities. So things that for normal folk are impossible are sort of are normal for thieves. Sorry, on the old school thief. Let me just put that video in there in the chat. So my thing would be, yeah, sure, anybody can do it. Thieves are simply much better. And I posited that one thing you could do is use levels of the dungeon to affect difficulty. So yeah, maybe on the first level of a dungeon, thieves get it if they're first level, right? If you're on let me try that again. If you're a first level thief on the first level dungeon and you're running into mundane traps, you can just do those, right? It's kind of a 1-for-1. Or you could even say, okay, that one you have to roll. If you're a second level thief on a first level dungeon, those you just get for free. You are now greater than that. An individual, a fighter or something on a first level, sure, maybe they could roll. Maybe on a second level, you say it's really tough or it takes much, much longer. You could come up with whatever ways you want to factor in the increasing difficulty as you're going down the dungeon. Whereas that second level thief on a second level trap is normal. And then once they become third level, those second level traps just become easy peasy. And it doesn't have to be that aggressive a leveling. You can make it however smooth, whatever you want to do. Use the cleric's turn undead charts for that. I think it works very well. Of course, it does cause you to use a 2d6 as opposed to a d6. So you can do that, right? In BX, these rolls are not dependent on your dex. If you notice, the X in 6 rolls for thieves have no modifiers for dexterity. So it would be unfair if you gave someone a roll under dex check while a thief has to roll X and 6. You want to equalize it. Whatever you're using for thieves, you want to use something for anyone else, but just make sure that thieves are significantly better as they should be. So that's kind of the second part. Second part first. On to the first part. Again, I try to go by they don't ever say it, right? But it says things like move silently. And we kind of take that for granted that they're just language for move quietly. Oh, it means the same thing. No, I really feel like it means move silently. So when the thief is moving quietly, it's probably going to work in most circumstances. But then when need be, they can move silently. Like I think I try to take them literally, right? Hiding in shadows to me is not just a euphemism for hiding behind a column. They don't mean the same thing. Literally, the thief can stand in the shadow of the column and be hidden. Whereas when the fighter sits in the shadow of the column, you're looking at that dude going, what are you doing in that little shadow? Like, it's not, like, I can see you. Hello, you're standing right there. Hello. Right? They have to hide behind the column. The thief can hide in the shadow. Okay, I need to climb this rope. Great, anybody climb the rope. Or I need to climb this tree. Great, anybody climb the tree. I need to climb a sheer surface. I don't take that as just meaning, oh, it's cool. No, I mean it. They can really just climb sheer surfaces. The wall behind me that's got no handholds, nothing at all. Only insects are able to climb it. The thief, they get a chance to climb that. So I really try to read into those, the way they're phrased and embrace the supernatural part of it, not they're just it's just florid language for something mundane. No, I take it to be more literal. These are pseudo supernatural style effects. So read them like that, and then anything underneath that is free. If he needs to hide behind a column, they can just do it. I'm not going to roll for them, but I'll roll for the fighter to see that his sword's not sticking out or his mail's not shining in a little bit of candlelight. They'll roll. The thief, I'll just give it to him. Oh, you just need to climb this wall, this brick or stone wall that's crusted, has ivy climbing all over it. Yeah, sure. Fighter, you can make a roll. Thief, yeah, just you got it. It's good. Is it sheer? Nope. So you don't have to roll. Boop, you're up. So that's how I tend to run it. Let's see. Frederick Rourke says AD&D second edition pissed off many thieves, but usurping their need in the party with my magic user lots of spells can be used to emulate the thief. Yes. So you do get to a certain point in the game where spells like knock and levitate and whichever ones you want to do tend to push into intrude on other niches. I suppose the original idea was they were thinking that, well, if you don't have a thief, you have some option to get things done reasonably well. 2, you're paying for those with limited resources. So you can do that trick a couple times, but you can't do it all the time. Of course, if you've got tons of spell slots or you have tons of scrolls or tons of anything, then something just becomes, I'm the magic user, or I have a ton of wands. Oh, wait, let me dig into my pack and find the wand of 800 knock charges, and I'll just do that. I do like to exert a bit of niche protection with classes. I don't want someone to just be able to replicate everything about it, or I want it to have those kind of limits. In a low magic setting and with a lot of limitations on magic spells, your magic user might have knock, but not want to use it because they may need to cast fireball on the other side of that door. And if they use knock, maybe they can't use fireball. That uses up the same slot. I forget what level knock is, so whatever. Insert another spell that might fit. That can help, right? But, to be honest, though, this whole idea of, well, isn't everybody doing that? Well, take the fighter. Everybody fights. No one suggests there shouldn't be a fighter class. Well, everybody fights. My magic user has to fight. The cleric has to fight. What do I need what do I need fighters for? Aren't they all fighting? Yeah, but the fighters, better. By the same token, yeah, there are sneaky whatever things that players are doing, and the thieves just better. But I do think that just like fighters have classically certain protections, they're open to more armors they can wear and weapons they can use, and magic, all the magic equipment they have, whereas other classes have limits on those. I do think for the thief to be effective, you want to limit things that are just going to negate the thief, like some of those spells, or at least make sure they're not common. Let's see. Frederick Ork says, unseen servant and hand the servant a broom. Sweep this room clean. Yes, indeed. I think Mickey Mouse ran into trouble with unseen servants. Okay, here's Thror the Second. You're taking up vote. Thror, my interpretation. Anyone can try to hear noise. Thieves have the abilities beyond the finest elf ears after first level. Anyone can hide. If there's something to hide behind, a thief can hide in shadows, in plain sight. Anyone can climb a tree or tower wall if there's a rope. A thief can climb a sheer surface without ropes or climbing gear. Anyone can try to find a large mechanical trap, but only a thief can find or try to remove a small chest trap or door trap. Anyone can try to force open a door. The thief can pick the lock and get in without alerting the occupants. And unlike a knock spell, he can do it every time. And then so on and so forth. Yeah, that's pretty much, I think, how most folks looking at it. Though I think there's lots of different ways to run thieves. Now, I do like the specials from Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and I'm sure there are other ones. And I like using, and you definitely don't have to use X and 6. If you want to use a different one, if you want to use a D20 type roll or some other kind of roll, you really just want to make sure that the thieves get the advantage on those rolls, however you are doing them. Excellent question. All right. Upvote for Jeremy. He's been nice enough to send me some stuff to read. And I like it, so. Okay. Rat Keeper career for Warlock OSR. I haven't read Warlock yet, so I have to hold off on answering that one. Gaining XP without leveling up. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, here's one. Mass Combat the Easy Way, a love letter to the Platonic Solids. I think this is going to take us somewhere else. It is. Okay. Let me just go back for a second. Upvote that. Open up in a new tab. Go to the comments just so I get that. All right. Here we go. This is from the Map and Key blog, posted on September 28th, written by Andrew Lennox. And thanks, Andrew, for putting your name on your article. I don't know why it seems like so many OSR bloggers, it's like they're blogging from the Witness Protection Program. Hey, Terrence. Terrence says Warlock is a variation on Troika / Fighting Fantasy. Yeah, I've heard it. And I've heard good things about it. It's on my list. Just haven't had a chance to read it. So I feel like it would seem weird for me to look at a variant or thing for something that I haven't actually read yet. And I'm not super knowledgeable on Fighting Fantasy anyway. I have to go back and kind of get a refresher. So another time when I'm more ready. I'm sure there will be more things. I posted in the chat the link to this blog post if folks want to check it out or reference it later. Last weekend, I kicked off my latest campaign, the Chronicles of Mistar. I am starting a years-long open-world hex crawl for all my friends, family, and anyone else brave enough to join us. More about that in a later post. My daughter and I kicked off the campaign in the backwoods of the Duchy of Karamakos, in the city of Kelvin. After wandering around the town and gathering half a dozen rumors, my daughter decided to head north up the Volaga River to Castellan Keep, the canonical site of B2, the keep on the borderlands. I am so excited to finally be running this module. I have placed the Caves of Chaos somewhere on the map in almost every campaign I've ever run, but the players have never taken the bait. Within the hour, my kid and I were burgling kobold lairs and pitting the fractious factions of the caves against one another. Too many goblins. On our third expedition to the Caves of Chaos, my daughter rolled a very favorable reaction roll upon entering the goblin's lair. The goblins excitedly invited our party to assist them with a raid on the orc lair in Cavern B. My daughter agreed to join forces, and the goblins disappeared into the caves to muster their troops for the onslaught. Instead of deciding a reasonable amount of goblins to join the strike team, I just had my kid roll 46. She rolled a whopping 19, and I immediately regretted my decision to run this game procedurally. Our party of 6 PCs and NPCs would be joining a strike team of 19 goblins to attack a warren of 12 plus orcs. My daughter is 8 years old and a D&D veteran at this point, but I know she does not want to sit through 40 attack rolls per round to figure out the outcome of this battle. Ain't nobody got time for that. I needed a tool. Dice, abstraction, and divination. The answer to the question of how am I going to represent this goblins in a meaningful tactical battle was sitting right in front of my face. I had rolled 46. There it sat on the table. 3 dice showing the number 6, and one die showing a 1. I could just use these dice to represent groups of goblins marching into battle. Dice served first as a divination tool to determine how many goblins were joining the attack. Then the dice served as an abstract representation of squads of goblins marching off to war. So our miniatures marched off with their squad of goblin dice to the orc warrens. Once there, I could represent the orcs themselves as yet more dice. Then I realized I didn't have to roll attack rolls at all. I could just roll the dice themselves to determine the losses in any squad. On the fly rules. Here's what I came up with for my dice squad battles during play. All right, here we go. The goblins and orcs were treated as one side in the battle, and I rolled initiative for all the monsters versus all the players. Monsters were represented by D6s, each D6 being a squad, with the face-up number representing how many monsters remained in the squad. Red dice were goblins, blue dice were orcs. Players take their turns as normal, attacking any squads they drop an orc or goblin. Per the normal rules of D&D combat, I reduced that die by 1 tick. On the monster's turn, all squad die monsters act simultaneously. If a squad is attacked by another squad, the squad die will be rolled at the end of the round to determine the new number of units in the squad. If you rolled higher than the current number, re-roll. If a squad dies at 1 and attacked by a squad, the lone creature is dead. If a squad is attacking players, roll normal attacks for that squad against PCs. Terrence says, sounds kind of like the old Dragon Dice game. Yeah, a little bit. I have a bunch of those dice there that I just was picking up. And even though I've never actually played Dragon Dice, I just went on a spree of buying some of the dice. Future rulings. Seeing the rules written out above really exposes a lot of potential corner cases and fun enhancements that could arise from this little simulation. I don't think I'll write up any official rules for this, as it worked perfectly well just adjudicating things on the fly. But the next time I run larger scale combat this way, I'll keep the following ideas in the back of my head. Advantage and disadvantage. If the squad has some sort of environmental advantage, roll an extra die and use the better result. Hit dice for squads of creatures with multiple hit dice represent the number of hit dice with the die instead of the number of creatures. For example, for a squad of 6 creatures, each with 2 HD, use a D12. Maximum casualties. A squad die can only take a maximum number of casualties equal to the opposing squad die. So if there are only 2 goblins left attacking 6 orcs, the minimum number for orcs is 4. Splitting squads, dice could split to take separate actions. Again, I could go on and make this into a crazy minigame, but that's not the point of this. The point is that we could track position, movement, attacks, and casualties all with one measly little die. We can use the results to inform the fiction and keep keep the play flowing quickly, and get to a satisfactory result for the players that they can feel is fair. And then finally, conclusions. The way the dice flowed from being a tool of divination to representation to combat resolution was terribly exciting to me. It was simple and moved naturally from the player asking a question about the world to showing the effect on the world. I look forward to exploring the world of Mistar with my friends and family more and sharing the fun with you. All right, thanks, Andrew Lennox. Appreciate that. Let's go back. Okay, so I already gave enough vote. So I have a couple of thoughts. I like the dice idea. It doesn't work in a couple of ways for me. Now, if I'm playing Theater of the Mind, it's not a big deal. I can just have the dice on the table, or I can just be managing them and having them, and I can think about kind of what they mean. It's more abstract. If I'm running a dungeon tactically with minis, one die representing 6 goblins that are existing in a 5-foot space, I have to figure out some way around that. Maybe at that point it's easier just to have 6 goblin pieces, because it's, you are trying to factor in what the battlefield looks like. And if you're in a 10 by 10 room and say you have a corridor, 5-foot corridor on one side, 5-foot corridor on the other side, you have 19 orcs. They're filling up a lot of that space just with 19 orcs. Then you put in, or 19 goblins, then you put in 12 orcs. Where's the party in that point? I don't want to make it seem too artificial by thinking like, well, there are 19 goblins there, but they're all squeezed into one square. John Lennon says, just represent each group with the usage die, straight up roll off with the loser going down 1 die level. Something you could do. There's also Scryud, Scryud, simple combat resolution using dice. I haven't heard that one, John Lennon. Shoot me a link if you've got it. I'd love to take a look. So I like the idea in mechanically. If I'm using minis, I have to figure out some other way, because I do want to represent those individuals, even if it's just for how they're taking up space on the battlefield. It's not quite as big of a issue if I'm playing Theater of the Mind, because I'll just do that in my head. But if I'm going to do the thing with minis, I probably want to have minis out. I think it's going to tend to get unwieldy if you have creatures of multiple hit dice or mixed creatures. Okay, I have a squad, but they're led by a bugbear. How do I factor that? It gets a little more complicated. I think when you're dealing with just 0 or 1 HD creatures, it's probably better, I think, as they get more complex, if you have squads of, 4 HD creatures. I think it's going to start to get really complicated. One thing you could do is just try to be relative, so we're not worried about absolutely the 4 HD creatures, but what we really want to express is the difference between the 4 HD creature squad and everybody else. So if it's first level players, we really a party, or say 1 HD goblins versus 4 HD, just for hill giants, let's say, then really what we need to make sure is models that, okay, the hill giants are 4 times as deadly or powerful on average as the goblins, or whatever. Something like that. I kind of think you could use some of the chainmail stuff, because chainmail basically had very kind of simple roll mechanics if you're not using the fantasy, or even if you are, you could do kind of 1-hit kill, or you could do the roll handfuls of 6s, and just if you roll 6s, you win. And then it was just merely you would look at the charts to see if are these, what kind of troop type. If you wanted to use the sort of troop type tables, you could look at and say, okay, these I consider these heavy infantry versus light infantry. Then you could just roll some dice and roll a handful of dice for each one and see. Well, yeah, it's interesting. I think for certainly just like a run and gun for a simple combat where the sides are relatively equal, I would think orcs and goblins are close enough that it would make sense. You could run it really quickly, but for something else, I might want something more detailed. But I will check out that simple combat resolution using dice, aka Scryud. In case that has some wisdom. Male username password said, interesting. I don't know if you're aware of chainmail mass combat rules. Anyway, it's harder to understand, but kind of simply, the basic idea is roll 1d6 for each unit attack. A roll of 6 hits the enemy and kills it. Roll more or less dice each group of one or more units and hit on a 6, 5, or smaller number, depending on how better equipped is the attacker or defender. And then he links to Delta's blog about that. Yep, that's definitely probably my first thing. And yeah, there's I know it's in the RC. I don't know if it shows up in one of the Beckman books or it's a different book, but there are some. They get very complicated, but there are, I forget the name of it. What's it called? Battle Tactics, Battle System. I think in AD&D, and there's also some version of that in the rules compendium, I think, for running mass combat. Which, you're essentially you're figuring out a bunch of stuff, rolling dice, and then doing that. So that's probably another option. It's more complicated, you have to do more checks, but it comes in more handy when you're talking about a lot more variables. If you're just running orcs versus goblins or something like that, then that's pretty easy. You could do that, basically roll dice. But if you're rolling something and some things have magic or other kinds of supernatural abilities that you need to factor in, or multiple attacks that you want to factor in, or something else that you need to factor in, then some of those other rule sets are better at trying to figure out what those adjustments mean in terms of abstracting the combat and account for them. If you don't need them, you don't need them. But this is cool. I can dig it. Okay. What else have we got? What else have we got? Oh, here we go. Magic and Mystery on hacking magic systems. Okay, this sounds good. If your Redditors and upvote. Magic and Mystery on hacking magic systems, posted by Broba Fett. Greetings, friends. Greetings, Broba Fett. I'm currently working on hacking an OSR adjacent game called Forbidden Lands. Okay. Somewhat familiar with Forbidden Lands, mostly because I enjoy the core mechanic for the Year Zero engine. Got me thinking about magic and what some systems do well, and I was wondering if you all had some insight or opinion on how magic is handled in role-playing games. Specifically, I'm trying to move away from more modern concepts of magic found in recent D&D iterations and World of Warcraft or other MMORPGs, where the focus is on magic as a toolbox full of interesting options to pick and choose from in order to optimize with safe and predictable outcomes generally. Instead, I'm hoping to flesh out a magic system that offers a few characteristics. All right, so he's listing a bunch of characteristics here. Magic that is mysterious. Sorcerers and witches must learn from an experienced practitioner or test out a spell to see what it does. They might have some idea of how the spell works, but this is something that the player writes down as they test it out. Magic that is mercurial. DCC does this well. Learning a spell might be a somewhat dangerous or have unpredictable effects when first committing the spell to one's repertoire. Magic is high risk, high reward. Know that resurrection spell isn't 10,000 gold worth of diamonds. To resurrect someone from death will take a remarkable price. Perhaps the life of another, a blood relative, a willing sacrifice. Magic isn't something regular people should do. Again, Dungeon Crawl Classics and Forbidden Lands do this well with the potential for spells to have rather frightening consequences. I'd like to preserve that. I think this would do nicely to prevent a sort of high fantasy quote-unquote feel, if that's your flavor, by making witches and mages undesirable to keep near one city for this reason. Magic is connected to the world. Spell components matter. Perhaps they aren't always required to cast a spell, but, when available, they confer a mechanical benefit. It now makes sense to try and kill the troll after all. Troll blood will increase the likelihood that your invisibility lasts longer. Perhaps a ritual or special place can also increase the relative safety of casting spells. Magic is not universally similar or understood. I really wish there were more tangible differences between types of magic, e.g. cleric versus wizard, aside from spell lists. What if one type of magic was entirely ritualistic and material focused? What about another type focused on, say, imbibing the right chemicals, a la Witcher? Or maybe a type of magic that is incredibly versatile but incredibly random, as in maze rats. So my questions are how you might design something like this, and if you had some ideas about magic in your own campaign that I could source from. Do you think players would be comfortable without clear lists of spells in front of them? How might you approach having multiple intersecting systems of magic in the game? Do you find systems like DCC where spellburn and magical consequences are too punishing? Or do you find players enjoy the risk? Are there systems of magic that you found particularly clever or interesting? All right, so there's a lot there. My first thought was Barbarians of Lemuria. I love that magic system. That magic system ticks a lot of boxes. It is mysterious. It is mercurial. Has risk reward. It has prices. It is connected to the world. But it is also very flexible. I think it's a great system, and I would probably look there as a point of inspiration. Elfbait says, I love dark and dangerous magic. Another thing I have not yet read, which is also on my list of things. So that's that. But I've heard yet again, I've heard good things about it. So yeah, I would definitely put that down on my list. I think you do have to find, right, nothing's going to please everybody. And part of what D&D has been moving towards is, and I don't fault them for this, generations post, I don't know, I don't want to say millennials, but people who kind of came of age in the post Harry Potter world have a fairly different idea of what magic looks like to me, who grew up in the sort of post Lord of the Rings kind of world. It just looks very different. When you read Lord of the Rings, you read Gandalf and see how his magic works. I mean, to the limited that you see any magic at all. Or if you watch the movie Excalibur and you see the kind of things that Merlin does and the prices they pay and everything they do, it's very different from what you see Harry Potter and those characters do, and how a magic battle, whether it's put on in terms of a classroom exercise or with the Death Eaters, right? What that looks like. It's just a very different version of magic. So I don't have a problem with D&D kind of reading the audience and saying, okay, the newer generations, they're much more into this kind of magic than they are in the other kind. So we're going to make that a major component, at least to some level. They haven't done it all the way. There are still wizards that are a little bit, they're not like they used to be. They have everlasting cantrips and whatnot, but they still have some of that flavor. But you could also play these other classes where the bounds are taken off. And I don't fault them for that at all. I think there are a lot of people who now look at magic with those eyes, and that's kind of what magic should be. I've always liked the kind of cooler, weirder, odder, it takes longer, but it's more powerful kind of magic. You're not usually going to Merlin and saying, Merlin, help me kill this one goblin. You're saying, Merlin, I need to sneak in past an entire castle worth of people. What can you do? And the scale of what you're trying to do, and say, okay, but this is going to cost me. I'm going to have to sleep for 5 years to help you do this. Do you still want to do it? Right. I think that's really cool. But there's that line there, right? Yeah, it's really cool to say, okay, I'm going to make a huge fog so you can sneak in the castle. But now my character's out of commission for 5 game years. Okay, not fun, right? So you figure out ways to you got to find that line for you and your players. Okay, what's a good cost that seems applicable but isn't just, all right, well, now you hand me your character sheet as you go sit in a cave for 5 years and in a coma, and then I'll come back to you, right? So you got to find that spot. Obviously, there was the kind of swords and sorcery, the sort of Vancian magic that Gygax and company were inspired by originally, that kind of set the tone for how magic in D&D was originally, and to some degree still is. So, right, all these things kind of change. Elf-Bait said just in general. Oh, okay, because I think there's some kind of, isn't there a book that's like Dark and Dangerous Magic, or Magic Dark and something? I feel like there's something. Maybe I'm remembering the name. Elfbait says, I love the scene in Hawk the Slayer where the big bad evil guy wizard says, this wound is beyond my power to heal, but here's a magical salve that will make it stop hurting for a bit. Yeah, something like that. Or in Lord of the Rings, in Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf essentially, uses whatever the spell would be to lock the door, and the Balrog on the other side of the door counter spells him. And when Gandalf rejoins the party, he's something like, the counterspell almost broke me. The effort he needed to kind of hold on to that spell. Things like that. Like, yeah, that's really cool. You got to figure out a way to game it. So the answer of, well, what do your players want? You got to talk to your players. I think you'll find all kinds of different answers. I think in an OSR sense, I think you'll find a lot more players and GMs who are willing to take on extra danger, to take on some of that randoms, to take on some of those elements. I think if you go into a 5th edition group, you'll see a lot of responses saying things like, oh, I would never play in a game like that. Why are you gimping my wizard? Are you gimping the fighter in some way? Are you making it so the fighter almost stabs themselves every time they wield a sword? Why are you doing that to my wizard? You're going to find all kinds of different responses depending on where you are, who your players are, and whatnot. But my first choice, if you're going to look at one, would be that Barbarians of Lemuria magic system, which I've covered on the channel. Go and check out that video if someone who's interested in this question happens to pop in here at some point. I like it very much, and I'm going to try to figure out some way to get it into maybe more vanilla OSR mechanical form. Does anyone mention, maybe it's Wonder and Wickedness? Maybe it's one of these I was thinking of. I thought there was something like Magic, Dark and Dangerous Magic, something or other. Heretic 911 says, I don't have a good answer for you, but this has been on my mind for some time now. You're likely familiar with Wonder and Wickedness and Marvels and Malazans, but just in case you aren't, the way spells are worded and meant to be used is quite inspirational. They also mentioned the Chthonic Codex. Someone asked, someone put some long answers. All right. Boba Fett, I'm interested. Hopefully you'll post it in here, and it will be here when I head back in here at some point to check out things. Elfbait says, I've had that sort of response from 5e players when offering a campaign with a grittier feel. Yes, there's a lot of this, why are you gimping the class that I like? I'm never going to play that game. Which I always hate those responses because the poster is, I don't think, ever asking, would you play in this game? Hey, do you want to play in this game where I do this to X class? But sure enough, you get a bunch of people saying, I would never do that, Clay. Why would you ever do that? I'll never play in your game. No one asked you. No one asked me. They just want to know, something else. It might even be just an aside. I'm fine with all that stuff. Look, if you want to make magic users harder to play, okay. And then someone's going to say, well, then no one's going to want to play magic users. Okay, fine. So no one plays magic users. So what? It'll be a magic user free game. That's their choice. The other thing of it is, and maybe this is just I don't know what it is. Because there's a certain point where you go, or where I think to myself, okay, hey, I'm going to do this to magic users. It's going to be harder to play magic user in this game. Or I acknowledge, hey, I want to do something with spells. It's going to cost you a full turn. You're going to have to, not only are you going to have to declare your spell at the beginning of your turn, it's not going to fire at the end of the current turn. It's going to fire at the end of the next turn, right? Or I'm going to do something like that. Like where every level of the spell, it's going to take a turn to cast. And some people will say, oh, so you mean for Fireball, I got to wait for 3 rounds? And maybe I'll say, well, you could maybe hold the spell. I think I saw the Swords of Jordanba games he was doing. They were playing with some rule where you could kind of preload a spell in your mouth and kind of hold it there. Right? Okay, that's why I want to do it. Now, as a player, I might think to myself, well, I don't want to play a magic issue now. And as a GM, it's okay, that's fine. But also as a player, I might think, I want to trick it. I want to do the challenge. I have played a ton of OSR games. I love my wizards. I can conquer this. I am going to take on this challenge. And I'm going to make it work. I'm going to accept the challenge. You want to make it harder? I'm willing to play harder. I'm willing to up that difficulty from normal to extreme and see how well I can do. I'm gonna take on that challenge. I don't know why people always look at it in the negative sense, like they're trying to drive you away. Look at for instead that, hey, take on the extra challenge. Give yourself, how many 5th edition games have you played? Playing with the regular rules. So try playing one that makes it a little bit harder. Are you an advanced player? Then try playing on a little advanced difficulty. I mean, we all do it in video games and everything else. I've beaten this game at this difficulty, so I'm going to ramp it up to nightmare mode. And then give it another try. So turn it up to nightmare mode. See how it goes. Maybe you'll like it more than you think. Maybe you will embrace, ultimately, the extra strategy and tactics you have to deploy, where the fighters and the other folk have to keep you safe till the end of the next round, so this massive spell can go off. Whatever it is. Right? Embrace the challenge. Don't just look at it as that they're trying to drive you off. Look at it like it's okay. Take the extra challenge. I used to play a lot of fighting games not a lot, but I played Virtua Fighter and Street Fighter, and particularly with I think with both those games, there were some of the fighters you could choose, the combatants, who were harder than other ones. Not just harder, their moves were harder to do. They might have been, you might have had to play in a certain style to make them work. It's like if you could do it, it was really good, but even just the movements are good, or what you have to do is good. You just have to be. They were harder. You just look at it and say, oh, in terms of the difficulty to play them, easy, or maybe I don't know. No, which one was really easy? Like Blanca, easy. Someone else, a Dalsim, really hard, and you would just pick. Oh, I want to try the really hard guy, and the reward is because you win with the really hard guy, and if you get good with the really hard guy, you're probably really good, and that was just fun. But somehow with a lot of these games, people just forgotten that they don't. I don't know that type of fun doesn't apply for them. And honestly, that might just not be the challenge that they want. But it's a little bit of a shame because people just throw these things out of hand. I will never play that. Why are you trying to get me and drive off all the wizard players? And maybe the answer is I'm not. I'm just trying to get a feel that I want. And maybe if you try it, you'll enjoy it. I don't know. Rant over. Elfbait says, oddly enough, if you offer a game other than D&D or a D&D-like game, suddenly people are more receptive. My players didn't like the idea of gritty D&D, but they perked up at a Call of Cthulhu Dark Ages. And Terrence says, which is fair. I was getting frustrated with it myself. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is just there's a culture around the games. And I don't blame anyone in particular for it. And the culture around 5th edition right now, anyway, seems to be very much about player entitlement. If you're doing stuff that's going to entitle players, I think most people are all for it. If you do things that are perceived as being either pulling away from that entitlement or something else that is seen as I don't know, just anti-player entitlement, it's regardless of what the point or purpose of it is, you tend to get a lot more pushback. Whereas I think in the OSR, maybe because of the roots of it in games that didn't have a lot of those entitlement structures in place, at least as they're seen now, people are much more open to it. I'm not sure. I don't want to overgeneralize, but I think there's something to that. I don't know what. There might be something to it. Maybe not. Who's to say? But Magic and Mystery, interesting idea. I like that they have a list here of things that they're looking for. That's good, right? You're looking to house rule something or homebrew something. Know your goals. Know what you're trying to do. And they have a set of goals. They want mystery. They want it to be mercurial. They want it to be a risk reward. They want it to be something that feels strange. They don't want it to feel detached from the world. And they don't want it they want something that's idiosyncratic. So those are good. Good stuff by Robofet. All right. Maybe one more since we're at the hour. What do we got? 20 cheap tricks for DMs. I think I saw this posted to a Discord. Let's check it out. And it's highly upvoted. All right. So I'm going to open that. I'm going to open up a couple tabs here. Open up the comments, but I'm not going to read the comments right away. Let's read. Oh, this is called More Cheap Tricks. Cheap Tricks. All right. More cheap tricks. Putting this link. Folks want to pull it up. Also show it in the chat. Or show it on the stream. Posted on the Whose Measure God Could Not Take blog. Yielding Uncertainty and Unyielding Bronze. I don't have an author. Oh, yes. Phlox. By Phlox. From September 27. All right. They wrote a list of 10 quick, cheap tricks a DM can use in their games, and now they've done 20 more. And they're hoping that this becomes a trend, writing some cheap tricks, publish them, and then send them, and they'll link them at the bottom. All right, so this could be also become a compendium of cheap GM tricks. So let's see what we have. Here's number one. On Maybe I'll read all of them. I'm not sure. Let's just see how the first ones go, and then we can decide from there. Old modules used to have treasure maps as common loot, and this is a great idea. Remember to do this every time. Put it on your checklist. Yeah, that's a good one. Treasure maps, highly underrated. I think it might have been my first chat with Daniel from Bandit's Keep. We talked about treasure maps as good sources of loot. And then there are the gifts that kind of give again, right? Because really what you're doing is you're giving them as loot, essentially an adventure hook. Players are engaged by puzzles, even really simple ones. If you put your map on 9 tablets and make the easiest possible jigsaw puzzle, the 5 seconds spent realizing that they need to arrange the maps so the features line up will be time spent happily. Not sure I agree with that. I think some players are engaged by puzzles. I would say some of them are not. Probably if it's a simple one and it is tactile like that, it probably would work, but especially digitally now, I wouldn't necessarily just take that as read. And not everybody likes puzzles. I would even say for myself, I'm not a huge fan of puzzles, but certainly those, at least they make sense. It's not just a puzzle that's dropped into a space because it's a puzzle. You could totally see a situation, and it's something that's a fairly well-worn trope of someone had this thing in so many, and they had to split it up between their kids, between their lieutenants for safety, and they cut it up into pieces, or they broke into pieces, and now you have to put it together. So as far as that goes, that's something easy, and maybe easy puzzles like that make more sense. But then you get these kind of weird puzzles where for no reason suddenly, you have eight marbles, some are white, some are black, some are green. You got to do all this stuff. And then like the place has nothing to do with that. And the colors don't mean anything in the context. Nothing means anything in the context. It's just like this abstract puzzle was dropped in your lap. Oh, here, you're in the dungeon of the death god. Fill out this Sudoku so you can advance. Wow. Why? No, at least make it a crossword puzzle. Please, God of Death, please. Put things under stairs. It makes sense. It's memorable, and players will stop thinking of stairs as warp pads to the next map. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, usually they're kind of just solid stone, but yeah, that could be something. Of course, traps often go beneath stairs, so there might be something there. It might be a void with spikes at the bottom. Color code things. Brass key goes in the brass lock, goes back to point 2. Yeah, and I feel maybe, I don't know, maybe I always just think of things like Doom, like, oh, the red key, go to the red door. In my house, your keys, I couldn't just line up color with color. So maybe I think you get more thematic. How about the key with the dragon on the I don't know, whatever you call the non-keyed end of it, the non-cut end, something. Have some kind of decoration and then use that. And more than just colors. Colors might be just too simplistic for me. Ask players spooky questions in combat. When they fight a giant snake, ask if they're looking in its eyes. They'll be, oh, damn, I guess not. Yeah, I suppose you can have some fun with that, though it might get old after a while. But I suppose with all these, right, you want to use these in moderation, right? Put non-combat followers in the dungeon. Give the PC someone to talk to. Technically aligned against them, but full of useful information and possibly persuadable. Sure, right? You want to, if it makes sense, then yeah, there'd be servants and prisoners and just folks who are lower down the totem pole. They're not guards. They're not captains of the dungeon. They're just, I'm just a hairdresser, man. I'm just trying to get to my job. I'm just the postman. Everyone has family. Give the NPCs filial connections to each other. Have widows of dungeon massacres put bounties on the party. Have the family of dead party members assist their old friends. Yeah, you could do that. Again, it can get a little bit exaggerated because do they have the means to track down the party? I don't like the idea that the people just magically know the party did stuff. If you have a way to make it work, someone escapes the dungeon, they go tell you, Pa, Ma, they killed all my brothers, all your other sons are dead. I'm the only one who returned. That's great. But if you haven't sort of established such things and you just want to magically have people suddenly just be mad at the party for things the party did, I don't like that so much. So I would make sure it fits within the context of what you're doing. Figure out how to make it work and then plan it out accordingly. And then if it's just a poor little family, how are they raising the money to get whatever revenge, right? Make it make sense. Keep the scale in check, and keep your timelines straight. Small tweaks to the monsters of an area can do a lot for mood. Got a dungeon full of undead, drape them in plants. Got a dungeon full of goblins, give them birds or copper armor or woodworking talent. Or. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's always nice to make things seem different from each other, differentiate them, especially if you're using a lot of enemies that are going to show up in different places, right? What makes different tribes or groups or settlements of goblins kind of unique? Think about that. Play into it. And then maybe it can also be advantages for, I don't think it always has to be. Sometimes it's nice just to give them a quirk that isn't like, it's a quirk and it's going to make them super hard to fight or it's going to make combat different. It's like, no, you can just give them a quirk. They can have a combat kind of whatever quirk too, but you can just have all their eyes being blue and, whatever, or their toes crinkle at the end. It's just, just something interesting about them. John Lennon says, I make magic users discover their spells, and I always customize them for characters. I do like to have magic users discover their spells. I haven't done all the customization. I think it's something that when I have time, I like to do that, but I don't always feel like I have time. But it's a great thing if you can do it. Let's see. Trick players into doing your work for you. Give them dungeons to defend. Let them make up NPCs. When you don't know how to make a ruling, ask them to do it for you and use it. Yeah. Yep, I think that's certainly a nice trick. If you're stuck, reach out to your players. It's nice to have conversations about things. And if you feel comfortable with it, allowing your players to do a little world building, particularly if it's around stuff that they're supposed to be involved with or their backstories or whatnot, is great. And it makes sure that they're invested. If the players came up with stuff for themselves, they're going to probably have more investment in it on average than if they didn't. Put a lever in your dungeon somewhere, a PC will probably pull it, and then you can have something wild happen. Never a bad thing. When designing traps and mechanisms, rely on the simplest possible engineering. It'll be easier for you to describe and the players to visualize. Yes, though you're going to run out of things fast. And I think that's the kind of the problem with conventional traps. Because the first time you talk about the pressure plate and the blah, 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 it's great. And the 10th time, it feels like it feels old for you. It feels old for them. It's going to make less and less sense that, hey, wait a minute, we've been dealing with all these pressure plates. Why did this one evade our notice when the other 99 did? And so then you have to think about, why was this one different, or was it just bad luck that they missed it? And then how do you keep making them different enough to make them interesting? So yes, in theory, that's good. But I think ultimately the reason why you start making traps more complicated is to keep them interesting, other than having the same crap show up over and over again. Sometimes the biggest possible animal is scarier than a supernaturally giant animal, I guess. Sometimes a lot of smaller animals are scarier than a really big animal. That's certainly true, right? Swarms of rats and things like that can very much be scarier, nastier than just a giant rat. Elfbait says, this is why I often use hazards instead of traps. Hazards can happen more frequently without seeming dull. Yep, I agree. Hazards are good. They also can, I think they're more easily to customize for your dungeon type. Tell the players to be reckless in a light and challenging way. Tell them to pull that lever. That's going to be very dependent on your game style and type. Yeah, sure. In some games, that's going to work. In other games where people are very invested in things, they probably aren't going to want to push levers. And I do think that, no, I'm not going to tell them to pull the lever, because then if the lever does something great, am I just giving them something? And if the lever does something bad, what's my responsibility there? But if we were just playing kind of a fun game, like if my daughter was going to play her first game, I might encourage her just to try it. But no, I wouldn't do that in my normal game, because I don't want to take responsibility for what happens when they pull the lever. Because if I tell them to do it and it does something bad, they're going to be blaming me, and rightfully so. And then if it does something good, it's just kind of like I gave it to them, which doesn't always feel great either. Flags, symbols, and badges are cool. Give your bad guy a badge. I would agree with that one. Something with multiple names is cool. Give important people and places epithets. Nicknames, courtesy names, and true names. I think that's also very good. Marriage is a great reward for completing an adventure. Thanks for returning the Orb of Oremus. Would you like to have me as an ally and my handsome son as a cool minion/spouse you buy gifts for, and all sorts of plot hooks? It's going to be very dependent on groups. I tend to leave the kind of love lives of the players out of it, or their characters out. I don't find it a lot of fun to deal with. I don't really want to role play it out. And I would just rather within bounds, let them tell that story and have it on the side. So if they wanted that, I would probably allow them to roll some dice, maybe see if the other party feels the same, and they kind of let them do that off screen. But, I don't know that I want to make it central to the game. Think of all the cool stuff we have now that we didn't have 500 years ago, like e-cigs and motorcycles. Find ways to translate them into your game's milieu and maintain the cool factor. I would rather look at all the cool stuff from 500 plus years ago that we've kind of forgotten about and then bring those back in. Like maybe there are giant mirrors for, the old, the kind of, the ones that the death ray that I forget the Greek, the mathematician created that are floating around, are massive catapults that really were designed. I don't want fantasy e-cigarettes or fantasy motorcycles, but that's just me. Someone else, that may be exactly what they want. Make up plausible vocabulary and never acknowledge it. Okay, I don't see there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I think that's probably what most people do. People like poring over long lists of equipment with the cost attached. Make one of those up or steal them from somewhere, not because it's functional, but because people like it. Do we need to say that? Because, I mean, basically, you're going to get one. I mean, as soon as somebody needs to buy something, you're going to say, here's the list of stuff. So I don't know that that's a trick. I feel like every game, someone's got a list of equipment. So there they are. Not a bad list at all. I don't agree with all of them, but that's fine. You don't have to use them all. Certainly, some will be more useful in some games than others. Let's see. RGV Tim. There are some that call him RGV Tim. The part about letting your players fill in gaps for you, I've seen that happen to great effect. We had a DM who was stumped on what to do next, kind of winging it. All of a sudden, the party started talking, and lo and behold, we found out later. We came up with ideas about things he never thought of, changed the whole game for the better. Of course, we did not know which ideas we were throwing around. He was using until the end, but it worked wonders. Yep. Okay, Grubby Gus. These are really great, really fun, and already giving me a few ideas. Awesome. It's all you can ask for. Let's see. Lots of good stuff here. Comments. All right. And someone else added some more cheap tricks. Oh, someone was hoping for a stat block for Dream Police. The Dream Police. Yeah. Cheap trick. What was the name? The guy name of their guitarist always had the multiple guitars. I used to always joke with my friend who was, now he's got like a bazillion guitars in collection, but when he was first taking up guitars, I kept trying to convince him to have like the three guitars or something crazy like that guy from Cheap Trick had. I don't think he actually has one of those, so I might need to get back on him. Next time he Facebook posts having like 800 guitars of different types in his collection, I'm going to say, but you still don't have the triple guitar or the keytar. Those are my dreams for him. Not for me, for him. The Cheap Trick, like triple guitar and the keytar. All right, well that was fun. Another hour gone by. Hopefully, an hour useful to folks, or at least fun, exciting. It's Friday. Before you guys all bail out of the chat, if you give a thumbs up to the stream, that'd be awesome. If you found yourself in here and you thought, man, I dig these streams, man, then hey, go ahead and subscribe. It won't hurt you much, and you get notified when I do stuff. I think I will be back to the Logan's Project on Monday, or I might do the gaming recap. My session is tonight, so Monday I might do the recap for the session, assuming my session goes off. It's been various things have conspired to keep me from gaming so far this week, but I'm feeling it tonight. Anyway, we'll see. But everyone have a great Friday. If you're watching, if you're in the chat right now or listening, or if you're watching or listening later, have a great rest of whenever you're doing that. Game on, everybody. Talk to you later.